partner for the economy, as she insists she will deliver the next budget. But she's less certain about the future of her boss.
The Prime Minister is getting on with his job in being Prime Minister, and there is no vacancy.
Do you back him to continue?
Look, let's see what happens in the future.
Also tonight, net migration to the UK falls by nearly half to its lowest since the pandemic. Plus,
make some noise for Aston Villa!
an army of claret and blue on the streets of Birmingham as Aston Villa return home victorious from the Europa League. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the Labour peer and broadcaster, Baroness Hazarika, and the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Michelle Donelan. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. That's from 5:30. Well, hello, very good evening to you. Aisha and Michelle, welcome to both of you as well. So, after more than a year's delay, the government today endorsed the Supreme Court's ruling that sex means biological sex, and single-sex spaces must exclude transgender people. Well, the guidance says single-sex spaces, including changing rooms, toilets and sports teams, must be used on the basis of a person's biological sex. So, Aisha and Michelle, how will people judge this, do you think? A big impact, but potentially on the few.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's took 13 months to get to this stage after that ruling. And therefore, you have to question why, because that's a long time to wait for people not to have the clarity of how to actually apply that ruling, given that it was so clear. And yet what we've seen today is them come out and say, yes, that ruling is right, you do have to apply it, but in great detail, and now people have to comb through it. So I think the delay is really frustrating. It's obviously the right call, and it's common sense that is long overdue. And I think most people, if you ask them out there, would say that they welcome this ruling because it provides the clarity, it's a return to common sense and simplicity.
Aisha?
I think it is right that the government have obviously listened to what the Supreme Court said. And as somebody who helped draft the Equality Act back in the day, when, we were talking about gender, we did mean, we were taking that to mean biological sex. And so I think it's right that this guidance has come out now. But I hope we can also move forward to have discussions around this issue of transgender rights, but also protecting single-sex spaces and biological sex, and move on to have more constructive discussions on them.
Well, plenty of reaction since the publication at 5 p.m. The campaign group for Women Scotland, which was behind the Supreme Court's ruling, says today marks a milestone in protecting women's rights. But pro-trans campaigners say the government has failed to protect the rights and dignity of transgender people. Let's get more then. Here's Sky's Ali Fortescue.
It's been a long time coming. This is the Code of Practice from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and in it is a guidance on single-sex spaces that the government will put down. It is more than 300 pages long, and I'll read you some of the most important bits. Service providers will be allowed to exclude trans people from single-sex spaces if they decide other users could object to the presence of a trans person. If service providers allow trans women into women's-only spaces, it will not legally be regarded as a women's-only space. It also says that a gender recognition certificate obtained by a trans person does not change their sex in relation to the act.
This is, of course, after that landmark Supreme Court ruling more than a year ago on the definition of a woman, which the court said should be based on biological sex. Since then, organisations have been trying to work out what that means in practice. For single-sex spaces, from gyms, swimming pools, changing rooms, toilets, hospital wards or refuges. The Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, insists trans people are still protected. The impact assessment, though, concluded they've assessed changes which apply have a positive impact overall. However, the exception to this would be the gender reassignment protected characteristic, where we do think there are negative impacts. Gender-critical campaigners welcome the publishing of this guidance. There are some concerns, though, for the welfare of the trans community.
Women deserve privacy and dignity, and one of the most important things that this code does is it recognises that. It makes it really clear, and so it means that when if women have to go to court, like the nurse Sandy Peggy, for example, they've had to explain why women expect privacy and dignity in single-sex spaces. This code puts that into a statutory basis and says you don't have to make this case every individual time. It's really obvious that single-sex spaces should be single-sex.
Under international human rights law, under the European Convention on Human Rights and the Human Rights Act, it's really explicit that treating trans people as a third sex, it describes it as placing them as in an intermediate zone where they're treated not quite as one sex or the other, where they're not fully recognised as the sex that they have transitioned to, is a violation of their human rights. It's a violation of their Article 8 right to respect for private and family life.
We are the women! We won't be silent!
The Equalities and Human Rights Commission actually sent the guidance to the government months ago, and there have been accusations that the minister has tweaked or even watered it down. The government knows that this is a thorny issue. Is it a coincidence that it's being published at a busy time just before recess? Ali Fortescue, Sky News.
Well, this will be difficult for some people. And in fact, the report does acknowledge certain difficulties, for example, in sport, where they suggest that it may impose significant limitations on the ability of trans people to participate in sporting activities at all. And that, that is troublesome, isn't it, for some people?
It is, but I would say sport is one of the areas where there has been a bit more of a consensus, just because, some people who are transitioning may have a physical advantage, which, on a common sense level. But I think that the group of people that I am thinking about are people who have, fully transitioned, they've been living in their, gender, and I hope some kind of, we have to have a common sense approach to this, which I think we all agree is the right thing to do in terms of biological sex matters and single-sex space matters. But I hope there is kind of decency and courtesy extended to those people who have been living their lives. They've had, fully operational, they've had operation and all that kind of thing. I just hope that, there is some kindness extended to those people.
And on the sport issue, I mean, the reality of what we've seen over the last few years is that biological women have been really limited, and we've seen some of them leaving sport because they feel that trans individuals have had an advantage because of the way that they were born, and therefore years and effort and hours and dedication have just been completely wasted, and that has not been fair. And we've seen a rebalancing now, a bit more common sense, a bit more fairness coming into our approach on this agenda.
Yes, and the point I was making is that the law, as it's being applied, would mean you would have to exclude trans people from competing with their own biological sex. For example, it relates to somebody who was born a woman, has become a trans man, has received hormone treatment, and then they might have an advantage over women in a category. So that, I mean, you can't even compete as you were born, effectively.
No, you might have to have your own a new category, but I mean, there is no complete fair way of doing this when you step back because of the ramifications. But I think for too long it hasn't been fair on biological women at all. Given that they have really had to be at a disadvantage.
OK, and this all became very acute in terms of women's single-sex spaces, didn't it? Including prisons, as we saw in Scotland. It was very acute for the SNP at the time. So is the protection of women's single-sex spaces absolutely vital, and is that now recognised in law?
Yes, I think it is. And I think it is important for a reason. For a lot of women, particularly in prisons or women's refuges, they are very vulnerable. They're there because they're often the victims of extreme sexual violence themselves. So I think you do have to think about that. I also do think as well in terms of, for example, toilets and changing rooms. I remember this, my own experience of being when I was a younger woman. If you were ever being sexually harassed by a man, as often happened to us when we were younger, you would go to the women's toilets, not just to use the loo, but often to escape a man, and you wanted to speak to another woman in terms of to get some help or advice. So I do think that's important. But I do hope we can move to having a more constructive conversation around this, because in my view, there should be more facilities for different groups of people. There should be men's toilets, women's toilets, mixed, unisex, which are cubicle, and but also but not just small businesses, but talk about bigger places which do build things. A lot of building is lazy. Yeah. A lot of building is just like lowest common denominator. Parents need spaces in terms of like child, for changing nappies. Disabled people need proper facilities. So I hope we just have a bigger. Obviously, if you're a tiny cafe and you've got one loo. Yeah. I'm afraid everyone's got to share, right? And that's just, again, that's common sense. But if you're bigger, like facilities, I think you have to think,
Sports stadiums, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say that the conversation has just got more constructive in the fact that if you think about 2 years ago, people were not, 4 years ago, people were too afraid to actually defend biological sex. Now we've got people coming out saying, actually, this is the right approach. And we do have to be realistic, because I completely agree with you that we should try and be as respectful and as accommodating as possible. But we've also got to be realistic. And where would you end up if you were having 5, 6 different types of toilets? It would just be impossible and ludicrously expensive. And therefore, we have to have some common sense on the approach to that as well.
Well, I'm just going to give you a small example of that. Why are there not more women's toilets when you go to the theatre and things like that? I just feel like we design in a lot of things that are really easy for men and really terrible for everybody else, quite frankly.
And I've just noticed on a wide shot, we're all dressed almost identically. But you've just been to the Chelsea Flash show, so maybe we're in the right track there.
Summer's here.
Summer's here, exactly that. Now, the Chancellor insisted today that the government has the right economic plan as she set out economic measures aimed at helping families with the cost of holidays and days out. Well, theme parks and zoo tickets should be cheaper this summer after a temporary VAT cut. Children in England will get free bus travel in August. And Rachel Reeves says supermarkets should pass on savings from tax cuts on more than 100 imported foods, including biscuits. Well, the Chancellor has been speaking about the measures to our business correspondent, Paul Kelso. And while she was insistent that she would deliver the next budget, she seemed less certain about the future of her boss, the Prime Minister. Let's have a listen.
First of all, we have extended the freeze on fuel duty until at least the end of this year. I understand how concerned families and businesses are at the moment about the implications of the conflict in the Middle East. This is not a war that we started. I've been very open in my views that this war was a mistake, but regardless of that, it is having an impact on people here in the UK. So I've extended that freeze in fuel duty, extra help for HGV drivers, so people who have to use their car for work, for farmers and for rail freight. And yes, extra support for families during the summer holidays, because the summer holidays can be an expensive time for families. Parents have to take time off work. They've got to keep the kids entertained during those long summer holidays.
You talk about the job of Chancellor. Do you think you'll be delivering the next budget?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. Because in the almost 2 years I've been Chancellor, I've got the economy growing, beating the forecasts. We were the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first quarter of this year, defying the forecasts. Inflation, just yesterday, the numbers came out that inflation is down. The only G7 country where inflation fell last month, beating the forecasts. And we're tackling the cost of living. We've done that with £150 off energy bills. We've done that by freezing rail fares and prescription charges. And I've done it again today with this package of measures to help businesses, to help motorists, to help with the supermarket stock, and to help with the cost of the summer holidays.
And I'm sure all the people who want to be Prime Minister hear that loud and clear. To be clear, do you back the current Prime Minister to continue in his job?
The Prime Minister is getting on with his job in being Prime Minister.
Do you back him to continue?
And there is no vacancy.
Do you back him to continue?
Look, let's see what happens in the future. But Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister. He has chosen me to be his Chancellor, and I'm getting on with my job, delivering for the country and delivering for our Prime Minister on his priorities, which are growing the economy, tackling the cost of living crisis, getting immigration down and reducing NHS waiting lists, all of which we are achieving and succeeding in doing.
Rachel Reeves, well, a lukewarm endorsement of her embattled boss from the Chancellor, but the Prime Minister was keen today to try to seize the initiative on the economy, despite the continuing questions over his leadership.
Well, there's been a lot going on in the last 2 weeks, but what it is important for me to draw out is that actually the last week in terms of what we've delivered is really significant, because economic growth is at the highest, higher than predicted, and the highest in the G7, the most developed countries. That's really important because it means more money into the economy, more money to be spent on our public services. The NHS waiting lists, which we've been investing in and driving down, they fell. The numbers came out last week at the sharpest rate for 17 years. Migration has come down. The last government lost control. It was nearly 1 million. It's down to about a fifth of that, the figures that came out today. So all of these things show that, and I'm really proud of this, that despite all the other discussions that are going on, this is a government that is delivering for people across the country.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has joined us. A bit of summer vibes from the government today. John, reaction to it, the British Retail Consortium, for example, saying cutting tariffs, this is the 100 products in a supermarket business, would barely touch the sides of offsetting the rising costs for supermarkets. The IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, savings for families, pretty small is the words they used, about £10 per UK household.
All a bit churlish, isn't it? I mean, the hair shirt chancellor's become the Minister for Fun. I mean, I've noticed, I was saying, I was talking to Jane Secker earlier on today about the Prime Minister's mood this week. Seems better than it was
Ever
a
since
few weeks
North
ago.
Korea.
I mean, he was laughing and joking in the House of Commons at PMQs yesterday, when in recent weeks he's been really tetchy. And he was pretty cheerful in that interview he gave today.
So why?
As for the... Well, my suggestion was that he's demob happy, perhaps, and perhaps Rachel Reeves is as well. But just on the supermarkets, I mean, she said today, I expect supermarkets to pass these savings on. I won't tolerate any company exploiting the current situation to make excess profits. And there's new powers for the Competition and Markets Authority. So it's a fallback position from the cap that she was forced to abandon because of opposition from, for example, the Governor of the Bank of England. There's lots of nice measures here. I mean, clearly the government is fretting that people won't be able to go on holiday to the continent, say, because of jet fuel shortages. Thousands of flights cancelled already. So and after making us all feel miserable for weeks and weeks and months, suddenly the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are trying to cheer us all up. So I think it's a good thing, don't you?
Well, there's a but. I was going to ask Aisha, which is, surely we would like to know that the government is really, really working on contingency measures for all the things we might be short of, fertiliser, jet fuel, diesel, whatever it is, instead of giving me a VAT reduction on a zoo ticket.
Well, I'm sure those things are happening in the background. There's been lots of meetings that have been happening in terms of all the contingency planning. But look, I think it is important for the government to do what they can. Of course, they can't just pull a lever. They can't just give everybody lots of, money for free. But these small things, they do count and they will help. As John said, lots of families are going to be really struggling. They're not going to get away on holiday. And if people can try and have a slightly nicer time here, then I think that is something to be applauded.
But of course, got to get a parent's ticket for the theme park.
Sure, but they can't just be giving away stuff for free.
Well, I was going to say this is taxpayers who are paying for it, but actually the idea is closing a loophole that allows oil companies to avoid paying tax on their UK energy trading profits. So it is therefore funded, but nonetheless it feels like the British taxpayer is paying for people to have a day out. Is that the way to tackle, what is extremely acute for some people living with the rising prices that we've had since the start of the Ukraine war?
Yeah, and I think we have to really call this out as to what this is. In my opinion, this is an attempt to really bolster up a bit more support for Starmer and Reeves and give everybody a false sense of security and a bit of a nicer summer before a very painful winter comes where we potentially could be in a recession. And, underneath all of that is hoping that Burnham doesn't win his seat and that Starmer can then ride through, because this isn't really going to touch the sides. It is going to help a little bit, but it's a sticking plaster, and we're talking about temporary stuff. This is not about helping the long-term prosperity of the economy, and I think it's a bit rich, really, given what this government have done to businesses.
Yes,
they're stopgap measures, though. They're not meant to be long-term measures.
True, but this is coming to businesses that have suffered at the hands of the government in terms of the NI tax, etc., And therefore it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but I suppose the suggestion is there will be more targeted help come the winter. But is Michelle right, do you think, Aisha? This is absolutely acute, electioneering by Starmer, almost like we've come up to the point where we're about to have an election and you get a bit of a tax giveaway.
Well, I think we do live in a political climate, but I would say the cost of living crisis is real. I mean, that's not something that's just fabricated. You know, I think in a way you could argue, are we now in a situation where every time the government announces something, people go, well, that's just politics. That is politics. We live in politics. He's the Prime Minister. We're in a news show. Of course
it is. But it's him that's facing the election is the point.
Well, he's not. He's not. Well, he might have
like a giveaway budget there and then before a general election.
But, well, it's not, you know, you can't have it both ways. On the one hand, you're saying it's nothing, and the other hand, you're saying it's a bonanza giveaway. I mean, which is it? Which is it?
Though, aren't we? We're saying it's gimmicky rather than structural change.
I'd say it's a good thing to cheer us all up.
We care about families.
Yes.
A lot of families are going to be struggling.
Yes.
If this helps people have a bit of a day out, you know, that is surely a good thing.
But it would be more helpful if they were in employment or they had jobs that weren't under threat because of things like the NI tax or the other taxation where it's now crippling businesses.
But it also
it
would have also been helpful if you know, if things had not been left in such a state by the Conservative government. And the other thing is, let's not talk about the elephant in the room. We are going to have a really difficult time because of this insane war launched by Donald Trump, which, thank goodness, we didn't get involved in.
Yeah, but we were in a bit of a pickle before the war, and this is 2 years nearly now. So, you know, we can't.
I take your
keep
point.
That chestnut going
I take your point, and I'm not saying this government has done everything correctly. Far from it. I've been quite a harsh critic, but you don't undo 14 years in just 2 years, and that's just a fact.
Certainly not with increasing taxation.
But when you've left it got a big mess.
The Prime Minister was asked in that interview about his own summer holiday plans today. He wouldn't say what they're doing, but he's done one of these Substacks today, and he said, when I think about the summer holidays, I think about the Lake District. Every year, my parents would pack us into my dad's Ford Cortina and make the journey north. There.
OK.
A lot of staycations this year. A lot of staycations.
Yeah. Anyway, the White Jacket Army are on fire, aren't they, tonight? Let's talk about migration now. The Prime Minister, he did mention it, actually, in that interview that John was quoting there, highlighting some of the figures. But today, it showed that net migration fell last year to its lowest level since early 2021. And if you ignore the one-off impact of the pandemic, the 2025 figures are actually the lowest since 2012. Well, let's take a closer look with our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire.
Net migration is falling, but most of the public don't think that's the case. That doesn't necessarily mean people are wrong about migration for a couple of reasons. So what's going on here? Well, this is the story of net migration over the years. You've got immigration here in blue, emigration, people leaving the country, in that sort of turquoisey, and then net migration, the difference between them here in black. And you see over the years that was sort of declining. Then you have this really, really big spike post-Brexit, post-pandemic, post the changes that happened. It really went up until you had net migration nearly at the 1 million mark. Well, where has it gone since then? It's really been falling. It's fallen to 171,000 from 331,000 in the previous 12 months. So that is coming down. It's around the sort of levels comparable to 10 years ago. Why is it coming down? Well, first of all, we need to understand why it was so high in the first place. And this is that story of immigration. We've broken it up here into British nationals, EU nationals and non-EU nationals. Now, again, ahead of Brexit, ahead of the pandemic and those rule changes, we saw that EU nationals were the biggest sort of source of net migration in here. A bit less for non-EU nationals, British nationals here. But then when we get here again, there's this big increase in non-EU nationals coming post-Brexit rule changes and post-pandemic. It absolutely soared. More than 1 million people, non-EU nationals, in 2023. But it has been coming down to around 350,000 last year, almost halving, which is mainly because of government changes to policy. They closed visa routes for overseas care workers, stopped most students and care workers bringing family members. There were higher salary requirements for skilled workers, and there are more students returning home. And what do the public think? Well, this is what we think. 16% of the public think migration fell in the past year. That is the correct view according to the statistics. 49% of people think immigration increased in the past year. It's probably another gap too between the statistics and people's experiences. The rate of new arrivals versus the cumulatively effect, which is what the public actually sees. Same as when economic inflation rate, that goes down, should be good news, but the prices people pay are still higher than they were before. The same for immigration. For instance, net migration may be dropping, but it still means, for example, that 627,000 non-EU citizens arrived last year, a few hundred thousand also less. And that happens year after year. So this is what this shows. This shows the foreign-born population in the UK over time. Less than 6 million back in 2004. It's this sort of steady rise all the way over until we get to 2022 and we're at over 10 million. And look what happens just in the last 2 years. From 2022 to 2024, there's another big increase. That is an estimated increase of 1.6 million people, more than the population of Birmingham. So foreign nationals now make up an estimated 19% of the population, nearly a fifth, really, versus 14% a decade ago, according to previous population surveys. So net migration may be falling, but because there are more foreign nationals than ever living in the UK, it might seem to a lot of people that it's still going up. And in terms of thinking about immigration and its effects on British society, that may be a wiser way of looking at things.
Tom Cheshire there. Well, why didn't the government come out and laud all of this today? Why was Shabana Mahmood not out there telling everybody? Oh, you forget she's one of those ones who said that perhaps Keir Starmer should set a timetable. But also, you know, I heard one suggestion that if they start talking about migration, the British public think, well, who do I trust most on migration? The answer might actually be reform. But anyway, so where was the fanfare about all of this? The Tories wanted to do it. It's now down to the tens of thousands. We did it.
Well, rather than talking about the media handling, let's talk about the substance of what this. I mean, these figures are quite extraordinary.
No, it was the absence of Labour figures, including somebody who's asked for Keir Starmer to step aside.
But let's talk about, I mean, we can talk about the game of who should have said what, but can we actually talk about the figures? Because these are, thank you, because these are really important. You know, when you look at how legal migration rose, particularly under Boris Johnson and particularly after Brexit, it is important to see these figures falling, but we also have to take a nuanced view on this as well and look at all the figures in the round. You know, I think sometimes the conversations we have about migration are really kind of, they're always relentlessly negative, and there is illegal migration in terms of small boats, and that is a problem that we have to get under control. That's a problem that the last government faced. This government faces that problem as well. Then we had legal migration, which completely rose under Boris Johnson. That is beginning to fall now. But it's not as black and white, it's just saying good news, bad news. There will be a cost to net migration. If we get to like net zero with migration, there are consequences to that, particularly in the care sector, the hospitality sector, our NHS as well. There might come a point where actually the exchequer is suffering in terms of the tax take. So all of this needs to be, we need to start having a more constructive kind of grown-up conversation on migration. Quite a lot of the discussions we have on migration are quite hysterical in my view.
But there's a lot of emigration as well, wasn't there, of people leaving, including young people leaving who you might argue are of the productive age.
Yeah, it's really worrying. So last year we obviously saw the mass exodus of the wealthy, and we had record numbers of millionaires leaving. Now we see these figures, and particularly the young 136,000, I think, 16 to 34-year-olds leaving the country. So we're seeing a brain drain and the long-term implications of that, because they're the future of the economy, the future workforce. That's really devastating in terms of what it could do to the economy. And yes, these figures are coming down. That is great news, but they're still remarkably high. And there is a great job to be done. And we do need that cap put in place to actually all agree what figure we want it to be and to make sure that we stick to it.
And, you know, tighter rules, visas for families, for example, John, but a lot of this, as we heard today, was actually measures brought in by the Conservatives before. Yeah, but
This government's still taking the credit for it, of course.
Yes.
You mentioned Shabana Mahmood. I suspect she just didn't want to be interviewed about the Labour leadership. That's why she confined herself to a Home Office press release. I mean, she says net migration's down by 82% in 3 years. Now, on this point about skilled workers, skilled worker visas are down 30% in the latest year. So that's your brain drain point. Health and care worker visas down, well, one figure says 93% from their peak in 2023. Another says 88% from their peak. So that, I mean, that's going to potentially create a crisis in the NHS, in care homes, and so on. And Chris Philp has pointed out the brain drain. Brits are leaving on a massive scale, he says. And then Tom Cheshire mentioned, of course, people don't seem to realise that it's coming down the way it is. There was a poll today, an Ipsos poll today, which actually said that immigration is becoming more and more the public's concern, more than NHS and other things, and cost of living even.
But I think it's the wrong way to look at it, saying that people don't realise that it's coming down. I think if something is a problem, but it becomes a bit less of a problem, it's still a problem, and that's how people are viewing it in that prism.
It's like inflation, really.
Yeah, but I do also think we have to look at the numbers. Remember, the numbers, particularly when Chris Philp was in charge and others, were absolutely... They were nearly 1 million, and they have come down to less than 200,000. That is a number that does need to be given some kind of credit.
Yes, it does, but the two main reasons that are being credited are the policies of the Conservatives to actually increase those thresholds for salaries and also address the student dependence.
If you're taking the credit now, will you take the blame for when they shot up?
I think we all took the blame and I lost my job, so...
I'm going to take the blame for being late to the break. So let's go to it. Papers are next.
Hope you don't lose your job.
Job or gone.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Well, it's time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let's take a look then, starting with the Metro, which reports welcome news for the government that net migration to the UK has fallen 82% in the last 3 years. The Guardian hears that London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan has vetoed a proposed £50 million deal between the Metropolitan Police and the tech firm Palantir, in which the force would have used their AI technology. In the Financial Times, a trading frenzy is expected on Wall Street, with SpaceX, OpenAI and Anthropic to be listed after new rules were implemented by Nasdaq, allowing stocks to be fast-tracked into indices. The Daily Express accuses the Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham of running away from their reporter after the potential Labour leadership contender was asked about his stance on the EU. Anything to put a shot of him on shorts on the front, I think, probably. Anyway, let's delve inside the papers now and let us go to Rachel Reeves and the double-page spread that we've got in the Daily Mirror. The summer of fun on a budget. Light relief. Rachel Reeves wants to shield families from the tide of rising costs with her savings scheme. This is the Daily Mirror. 5% VAT, down from 20%, of course, on kids' meals out and tickets for attractions. Does it cut the mustard for you, Michelle?
I still think it's a bit of a slap in the face and a bit rich, because these are the same businesses and organisations that have suffered because of the NI tax, the same ones that have had to get their heads round the repealing of the 1970s workplace regulation, the same businesses that are suffering from exorbitant energy costs, and the government is not trying to diversify the energy supply in terms of accessing North Sea oil. So this is a bit of a gimmicky sticking plaster. It's great news that families will have a little bit more money in the summer, absolutely. Is it going to fix any of the cost of living problems? No. Is it actually going to support these businesses in the long term? No. Does it show a misunderstanding of the way that business operates and actually what the government should be doing to almost get out of the way, lower taxes, lower regulation? Yeah, it does.
So the only way you get the savings that are on offer in terms of families is to spend more to get them. So you've got to pay for your parents' meal or your parents' ticket. You know, so it doesn't actually benefit you unless you spend extra. Do you see my point?
But kids aren't going to be going out
on their own.
No, you don't have your toddlers, off you go to Thorpe Park for the day.
It's not my household bills being helped by the measures that have been announced.
Sure, but I think this is a really difficult situation we find ourselves in, and things are going to get a lot worse because of Donald Trump's insane war against Iran, which citizens in this country are going to have to pay a price for. There isn't a kind of magic money tree to do everything that we would want and Rachel Reeves would want to do. So this is, I'm not saying it is everything, it is a small thing, but if it can help some families just have a little bit of joy in a pretty bleak time, then I think it is to be welcome. But absolutely notwithstanding, things are going to be really, really difficult for people, and we're going to be in a very difficult situation economically. But I think, you know, it's good to be doing something. A lot of families aren't going to be able to afford to go away on holiday this year. So if they can have a couple of days out and have, you know, take that ease off, then that is a good thing.
Still have to spend extra to do it, though, don't they? To the front page of the Daily Telegraph now, which has a story on its front about Labour, they say, is planning a £1 billion tax grab on family holidays. This is because HMRC officials are drawing up plans to impose VAT, back to VAT, of 20% on top of the fees that airports charge airlines to use their runways and terminals, suggesting it could be backdated by 4 years, which would add around £1 billion to costs paid by airlines that fly from Heathrow alone, for example.
Yeah, which might explain the policy that we just talked about a minute ago. Maybe the government feel really guilty about this and they think that they have to give something for people over the summer, because these types of costs are always passed on to the consumer. So that means that the price of flying is going to get even more expensive, and especially if it's backdated 4 years. And don't forget, in this government's King's Speech, they also had the tourism tax. But domestically, it's almost like they're anti-holiday. Give people a literal break rather than just the zoo, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the tourist tax, that caused a lot of consternation, certainly from, you know, holiday resorts that rely on people coming, where it increases the cost of holidays.
But you also, when we also go to other countries, quite often now we will go places and there will be a tourist tax, and that helps a lot for the local economies. You know, I've spoken to lots of local mayors in areas where really, you know, there's a lot of tourism, but that also brings in costs, it drives up rents and things like that. And actually, so I don't think that is such a terrible thing. Now, this story, and this is in the Telegraph, it's all very dramatic until you get to the end where it says a government spokesperson says we are not considering any changes to tax rules in this area. So I would just take the story with a slight grain of salt from the Telegraph.
Let's go to the Mac cartoon, shall we? If I call this pub a soft play area, I can cut VAT on beer to 5%. I'm not sure it quite works like that for the under 12s, but there we are. But it's certainly a nice take, isn't it? Let us go to The Guardian, shall we now? Single-sex toilets must exclude transgender people. You know, finally, the government announced its guidance after the Supreme Court judgment that sex means biological sex.
Yeah, 13 months it took them to do it, which is a sizable amount of time, seeing how that court ruling was crystal clear. But it is good news that now we have all agreed, in essence, that common sense must prevail and that we must have simplicity and safety for women. At the heart of this is a safety and a fairness issue that, particularly for women who felt very vulnerable because some of the past practices that have been happening.
Lovely picture there of Aston Villa celebrating as well amidst the sunshine in Birmingham today. I'm going to the Daily Express now. Stop running away from the Brexit question, Andy. You know, at this point, he's going to be driven away from his jog, isn't he? Let's be honest. But there we are.
I mean, I'm just grateful that the shorts have got a bit longer. I think that's just a good thing
I'm
for
sure
everybody.
someone probably sent them to him, but anyway.
I think that's a good thing.
Has he opened cans of worms, do you think, about Brexit?
Well,
or is everything going to be pulled apart?
I think this all came about because Wes Streeting made a speech last Saturday at the programme. I was actually at the conference, and he kind of opened up the conversation about Brexit. I mean, I feel like, you know, this is a conversation that people, you know, are wanting to have because lots of people do feel that Brexit hasn't been a huge success. There's lots of people that, you know, we're struggling for growth. We've just been talking about how difficult the economy is at the moment. There's no doubt that Brexit has affected our country's economy. So I think this is a conversation that lots of people are interested in having. But I think Andy Burnham has said himself that his primary concern would not to be rejoining the EU. There was a vote on it. The country voted a certain way. He's himself said when trust is low in the democratic process, just kind of overturning a decision is probably not the right way forward. But lots of people do want to have a conversation about rejoining the EU.
But I think the reason why Streeting injected this is quite clever. So he knows that
it's a sweet spot.
Yeah, well, he knows that the constituency that Burnham is standing in is a very heavy anti-the European Union Leave constituency. Therefore, he was trying to put him in a bit of a pickle because if he joined him in the more pro-EU stance, then he would damage his chance of election. So it was quite a clever move by Streeting, a bit of a wedge issue that he was trying to insert.
Yes, the Telegraph suggesting that Andy Burnham is expected to offer Wes Streeting a cabinet job if he becomes the next Prime Minister. That's the Telegraph has been told. Figures close to the Mayor of Manchester said reunifying the splintered party would be one of his top priorities if he wins the race for number 10, which takes us to the Makerfield candidates list so far. I think the Greens have been swapping their candidates around. But anyway, there is who is currently declared for the Makerfield by-election. More coverage, no doubt, each day. Now, documents released today confirmed that the late Queen pressed for her youngest son, the former Prince Andrew, to be appointed Britain's trade envoy. Andrew served in the role for a decade from 2001 before stepping down when scrutiny increased over his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been looking through the files.
What are the Andrew Papers? 31 pages released by government today. They were forced to do it by a vote by MPs. And it tells us quite a lot about how the appointment came about and just some of those things that might have rung alarm bells. Let's look at why it happened. What this is a document between a top official and one of the most senior figures in the palace. And it tells us, look at this, I'm going to enlarge the key bit here. There it is. As you were just saying, it's the Queen's wish that the Duke of Kent was succeeded in the role of envoy by the Duke of York. So there we have the confirmation of what you were just saying had been speculated for years, that the late Queen Elizabeth pushed this role. She thought it would fit well with the end of the Duke of York's active naval career, maybe worried a little bit that he didn't have enough to do. And here's an interesting insight. The Queen is very keen that the Duke of York should take on a prominent role in the promotion of national interest. She wanted to raise the then Duke of York, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's profile. That was the whole idea of this role. So the Queen was absolutely integral to all of that. But what do we learn from the various bits of documentation as part of this release file. Right, now this is another memo from 2000, height of the Blair years, between a Whitehall official and Buckingham Palace. And it describes meetings with particularly Captain Blair, who was Prince Andrew, as he then was, Principal Private Secretary, his top official. And it's talking up through how the role might work. And it says things like the Duke himself likes travelling. And there's quite a lot of individual preferences being passed on from the palace to Whitehall as they're working out how he'll do the role. I asked what were the Duke's preferences for activity during his visits. And a line that will haunt for the ages, a preference for ballet rather than the theatre. And it also added, and I think this line will be scrutinised quite closely, Andrew Batten Windsor tended to prefer the more sophisticated countries, particularly those in the lead on technology. So clearly some countries he wanted to go to, some he wanted to avoid. But here is, for me, one of the big red flags. It begins, Captain Blair, so the top aide to Prince Andrew. Let me just go on to the next page, because this is absolutely key. Let me make it even bigger. The Duke should not be offered golfing functions abroad. This was a private activity, and if he took his clubs with him, he would not play in any public sense. Right, this is quite significant to me, because what it is one of the most senior palace officials just notifying that the Buckingham Palace is concerned of the potential for conflicts of interest, using these trips funded by the taxpayer that are meant to promote business, maybe for a bit of golf, and that the Duke of York, as he then was going to take his golf clubs with him. And they just wanted informal memos to make everybody clear that this was a bad idea because they thought it was a potential conflict of interest. As you say, there's a lot in here, I think, that people will pick over for a while. We've got another disclosure to come the other side of recess that takes us to the beginning of next month. I think for Andrew Batten Windsor, all of this is just uncomfortable viewing.
So some of this was in the public domain, let's be honest about it. We knew that the Queen was keen to get Andrew that job, and might it have seemed natural for her to suggest another role, given that her cousin, the Duke of Kent, had already been operating in that role? So it just seems like it's a royal job. Let's get someone else from the... Or was there more to it, do you think, from her?
But they show that she's been, in effect, lobbying for her son. But on a personal level, she's a mum, she's looking after her son, she's trying to get him a job that, as you say, has just been done by a royal. She wants to keep him busy, and she thinks that this will be a good fit for him. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think that in any way should tarnish our memory of the Queen or her legacy or anything, because it's him that's to blame in terms of his poor behaviour and his poor decisions, nobody else. Yeah. But I think that the big revelation for me is some of that language that was used, more sophisticated countries. Let's remember what a trade envoy is meant to be. They're meant to be an ambassador for a nation. They're meant to go out there, sell modern Britain as a progressive country, one that great that you want to invest in, not appear entitled. And that's what that language appears.
And yet we've seen how important and how effective soft royal power can be with the King's visit to...
absolutely.
I actually said Donald Trump then, but actually to the White House and to Washington, to Trumpland. So, it could have been... You could open all sorts of doors and make good deals and, press the flesh and do good stuff. And, and maybe he did do good work, but... suggestion was that people were bidding not to have him come to their countries.
I think the big takeaway for me is what an absolute loser Andrew must have been. Right, if you are the son of the Queen and no one wants to give you a job and you're having to get your mum, who's the Queen, to lobby...
This was unpaid.
No, but Oh, come on, he was having a... I went on a trip that when I was a civil servant, he was having a very... It wasn't, like, impoverished. When it's like bring your son to work day and you're... what a loser, that's all I can say. You did a good defence of the Queen there, and, she's a great woman. I was a huge fan on many levels. But it is a testament. Most members of the royal family come with such privilege. People would be, snapping them up, trying to give them roles, whatever. It says a lot about, you know, what an insubstantial and clearly a figure that nobody wanted to have around, that the Queen has got to get involved in, like, HR issues, going, please, can you give my son a job? Please, please. I mean, that says a lot. And it doesn't reflect well on Andrew.
Yeah, he favoured ballet rather than theatre. Take that, Timothy Chalamet. That's all we have to say about that. But anyway, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. Birmingham turns claret and blue. I wonder why. As Europa League champions Aston Villa are welcomed home.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation. So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Well, a bit of TV history is ending tonight. Stephen Colbert's The Late Show. We've got a live shot for you in New York. After 11 years, 11 seasons, it is ending tonight. People already starting to queue. And this has been fascinating, hasn't it? The suggestion is this political pressure? CBS is suggesting it's for economic reasons. But, you know, we've seen some of these late shows that point the finger at Donald Trump have been, you know, quite fraught and quite tetchy.
Well, I'm afraid this is it's a real shame. Stephen Colbert is an absolutely brilliant, brilliant comedian. As somebody who's come from a stand-up comedian background, he's absolutely up there, one of the greats. You know, we look at these American late-night shows, we have a lot of admiration. I love that Sky has brought back Saturday Night Live in the UK, which has been brilliant as well. But it's a great shame because these shows are a really important part of the kind of cultural fabric of American life. Loads of kind of, I remember doing when I did a stand-up show in Edinburgh, and loads of American kids came and said, we love watching these late night shows. And it's a shame. This guy was critical of Trump. He's been critical of lots of people. He's a satirist. That's what satirists do. Clearly, Donald Trump didn't like it. CBS has been taken over by people who are very sympathetic to Trump. And Kel Surprise, his show has been canned.
Well, apparently for his penultimate monologue, he talked about the much ridiculed, as they say here, Trump gold cell phone, which is now available after a 9-month delay. And he said the only Trump item more disappointing after a 9-month wait was Eric, he said. So that's what Trump's fighting against anyway. But
this show is such an institution, especially in America, so it is a great blow to so many people.
Yeah, we'll have obviously reaction to that tomorrow when the shows actually happen. But you know, already people are gathering on the streets of New York to say farewell to that. Now, after last night's stunning win in Istanbul, Europa League champions Aston Villa have returned home to Birmingham to a hero's welcome.
Make some noise for Aston Villa!
Well, the city, with all the sunshine today, was a sea of claret and blue as fans jostled for position to catch a glimpse of the team as they were paraded through the streets in an open-top bus with the trophy, it says, on full display. Where is it? It's been a long time coming, of course, for Villa. The last time the team came home with a piece of European silverware was 44 years ago. And in fact, I think it was the 1990s when they won anything. Oh, it's the left side. Oh, there we go. Now it's in the air. Thrown around, in fact, actually. But this is what brings joy, isn't it? And I know we're going to get the England team announced with everybody talking about who might be left out of the squad.
Well, we've already heard a bit of that.
We've heard a lot of that already, haven't we? People like Harry Maguire, absolutely fit. His mother's having none of it.
A bit like the Queen, she's going to get involved.
What did she say? Absolutely disgraceful, I think she said, that Harry Maguire was left out. But this, you know, football cheer does lift people's moods. I know we talked about at the start of the show was, you know,
it's the national
VAT
game,
off zoo tickets, but this lifts people's moods too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we need a bit of feel-good factor, and, you know, if you're a Villa fan, that's fantastic. You know, Celtic people very happy in Scotland about the Celtic win as well. So, yeah, of course, brings a bit of joy. We need a bit of joy.
Well, football is, and football's the national game. It is the thing that unifies. Look at, even when it's a World Cup, when people are not that familiar with football or not that into it, and they will come and they will cheer on. But for those fans, that's incredible to look at that. And for 44 years, can you imagine supporting a team for your whole life, and maybe they've never won, and then they have.
It's a bit like being a Labour supporter.
Make the most of it while you can.
All right, Anna.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the England manager is expecting a live show at Wembley to announce the England squad on Friday morning, so lots of people will be watching that very closely. Top stories next on the wrap. See you in a moment.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today.
How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Tonight on The Wrap, government guidance on single-sex spaces. After a year-long delay, ministers confirmed that sex means biological sex in changing rooms, toilets and sports teams. But some MPs warn it could leave trans people in a hellish limbo. The Chancellor unveils a summer sweetener for the economy as she insists she will deliver the next budget, but she's less certain about the future of her boss.
The Prime Minister is getting on with his job in being Prime Minister,
continue?
and there is no vacancy.
Do you back him to continue?
Look, let's see what happens in the future.
Migration to the UK falls by nearly half to its lowest since the pandemic. Plus, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the Labour peer and broadcaster Baroness Hazarika and the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Michelle Donelan. What did I just call you? Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, hello there and a very good evening to you, Aisha and Michelle. Welcome to both of you as well. So after more than a year's delay, the government today endorsed the Supreme Court's ruling that sex means biological sex and single-sex spaces must exclude transgender people. The guidance says single-sex spaces, which includes changing rooms, toilets and sports teams, must be used on the basis of a person's biological sex. Aisha, Michelle, finally, one might say, what have we learnt, do you think, from this?
Well, look, I think it is important that there is clarity on this now. I think it's right that the government have accepted the ruling from the Supreme Court, and I think this guidance is common sense. I think there was I think for quite a long time, the lack of clarity around these issues have not helped what was quite a difficult and divisive debate. So I do think this is common sense. I do think that biological sex is important and it does matter. When I'm somebody who helped draft the Equality Act, and I think that is important. Single-sex spaces are important for vulnerable women, particularly in prisons and refuges. But I think for a lot of women as well, they do feel more comfortable, particularly in things like toilets and changing rooms. But I do hope we can now have a kind of more sort of compassionate, as well as a common sense, but a compassionate approach, because there will be a lot of transgender people who are really worried about what they're going to do, which facilities they should use. And I hope that there can be some common sense, accommodation for all of that as well.
Michelle?
So I think it is long overdue because that court ruling was 13 months ago, I believe. So there's been a long period of time, given how clear-cut that court ruling was. This could have come out earlier. The clarity could have been there earlier. And, what we've seen over the last few decades is women being afraid to use places like toilets, fearing about hospital wards. We've seen some dreadful incidences in our prisons. We've also seen gross unfairness when it comes to sport. We've seen some biological women that have worked their entire lives to get to the top of their game and then be almost knocked out by somebody that has a competitive advantage. And that's been discouraging for others who've been trying to come up through the ranks. So I think this is a great moment for common sense. It's great that people are able to air these views now and that we can potentially move forward with this agenda.
Well, there's been plenty of reaction, as you might expect. For example, the campaign group for Women Scotland, which was behind the Supreme Court's ruling, says today marks a milestone in protecting women's rights. But pro-trans campaigners say that the government has failed to protect the rights and the dignity of transgender people. Let's get more then. Here's Ali Fortescue.
It's been a long time coming. This is the Code of Practice from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and in it is the guidance on single-sex spaces that the government will put down. It is more than 300 pages long, and I'll read you some of the most important bits. Service providers will be allowed to exclude trans people from single-sex spaces if they decide other users could object to the presence of a trans person. If service providers allow trans women into women's-only spaces, it will not legally be regarded as a women's-only space. It also says that a gender recognition certificate obtained by a trans person does not change their sex in relation to the act. This is, of course, after that landmark Supreme Court ruling more than a year ago on the definition of a woman, which the court said should be based on biological sex. Since then, organisations have been trying to work out what that means in practice.
for single-sex spaces from gyms, swimming pools, changing rooms, toilets, hospital wards or refuges. The Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, insists trans people are still protected. The impact assessment, though, concluded they've assessed changes which apply have a positive impact overall. However, the exception to this would be the gender reassignment protected characteristic, where we do think there are negative impacts. Gender-critical campaigners welcome the publishing of this guidance.
Women deserve privacy and dignity, and one of the most important things that this code does is it recognises that. It makes it really clear, and so it means that if women have to go to court, like the nurse Sandy Peggy, for example, they've had to explain why women expect privacy and dignity in single-sex spaces. This code puts that into a statutory basis and says you don't have to make this case every individual time. It's really obvious that single-sex spaces should be single-sex.
There are some concerns, though, for the welfare of the trans community.
Under international human rights law, under the European Convention on Human Rights and the Human Rights Act, it's really explicit that treating trans people as a third sex, it describes it as placing them in an intermediate zone where they're treated not quite as one sex or the other, where they're not fully recognised as the sex that they have transitioned to, is a violation of their human rights. It's a violation of their Article 8 right to respect for private and family life.
We are the women! We won't be silent!
The Equalities and Human Rights Commission actually sent the guidance to the government months ago, and there have been accusations that the minister has tweaked or even watered it down. The government knows that this is a thorny issue. Is it a coincidence that it's being published at a busy time just before recess? Ali Fortescue, Sky News.
Well, the Chancellor insisted today that the government has the right economic plan as she set out economic measures aimed at helping families with the cost of holidays and days out. Well, here they are then. Theme park and zoo tickets, for example, should be cheaper this summer after a temporary cut in VAT. Children in England will get free bus travel in August. And Rachel Reeves says supermarkets should pass on savings from tax cuts on more than 100 imported foods, including biscuits. Well, the Chancellor has been speaking about the measures to our business correspondent Paul Kelso, and while she was insistent that she would deliver the next budget, she seemed less certain about the future of her boss, the Prime Minister.
First of all, we have extended the freeze on fuel duty until at least the end of this year. I understand how concerned families and businesses are at the moment about the implications of the conflict in the Middle East. This is not a war that we started. I've been very open in my views that this war was a mistake, but regardless of that, it is having an impact on people here in the UK. So I've extended that freeze in fuel duty, extra help for HGV drivers, so people who have to use their car for work, for farmers and for rail freight. And yes, extra support for families during the summer holidays, because the summer holidays can be an expensive time for families. Parents have to take time off work. They've got to keep the kids entertained during those long summer holidays.
You talk about the job of Chancellor. Do you think you'll be delivering the next budget?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. Because in the almost 2 years I've been Chancellor, I've got the economy growing, beating the forecasts. We were the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first quarter of this year, defying the forecasts. Inflation, just yesterday, the numbers came out that inflation is down. The only G7 country where inflation fell last month, beating the forecasts. And we're tackling the cost of living. We've done that with £150 off energy bills. We've done that by freezing rail fares and prescription charges. And I've done it again today with this package of measures to help businesses, to help motorists, to help with the supermarket stock and to help with the cost of the summer holidays.
I'm sure all the people who want to be Prime Minister hear that loud and clear. To be clear, do you back the current Prime Minister to continue in his job?
The Prime Minister is getting on with his job in being Prime Minister.
Do you back him to continue?
And there is no vacancy.
Do you back him to continue?
Look, let's see what happens in the future. But Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister. He has chosen me to be his Chancellor, and I'm getting on with my job, delivering for the country and delivering for our Prime Minister on his priorities, which are growing the economy, tackling the cost of living crisis, getting immigration down and reducing NHS waiting lists, all of which we are achieving and succeeding in doing.
Well, a lukewarm endorsement, perhaps, of her embattled boss from the Chancellor, but the Prime Minister was keen today to try to seize the initiative on the economy, despite the continuing questions over his leadership.
Well, there's been a lot going on in the last 2 weeks, but what it is important for me to draw out is that actually the last week in terms of what we've delivered is really significant, because economic growth is at the highest, higher than predicted, and the highest in the G7, the most developed countries. That's really important because it means more money into the economy, more money to be spent on our public services. The NHS waiting lists, which we've been investing in and driving down, they fell. The numbers came out last week at the sharpest rate for 17 years. Migration has come down. The last government lost control. It was nearly 1 million. It's down to about a fifth of that, the figures that came out today. So all of these things show that, and I'm really proud of this, that despite all the other discussions that are going on, this is a government that is delivering for people across the country.
Well, John Craig has joined us, but Aisha, first of all, why does he look so happy all of a sudden?
Well, he can't go on and look miserable. You know, he's got to try and put his best foot forward. That's but look, it is very difficult. He's obviously under a lot of pressure at the moment, but he did make some points in the sense that, you know, there are some things which do deserve some credit. NHS waiting lists are down. You know, there was growth in the economy. Immigration figures have come down massively. If those figures had been going in the other direction, we'd be saying, why, you know, this government's, you know, NHS waiting lists are going up, you know, growth is going in the wrong direction. So, look, it is a tough time for him. But I think, you know, he does deserve some credit in terms of, you know, those things have gone in the right direction.
I think people are going, oh, this government. I mean, he's had 100 of his own MPs come out and call for his head.
Of course.
And his own Chancellor couldn't even back him up. I mean, you know that you've got dreadful times when that happens.
I'm sure he's very aware of the fact that he is under a lot of pressure, and he is under a lot of pressure, and rightly so, because those election results were absolutely terrible for the Labour Party. But I'm just saying, if you're the Prime Minister, he's not going to come out and be like, it's all absolutely
Yes, but
terrible.
his mood has changed in the last few days. He was quite jaunty at Prime Minister's questions yesterday, and he was cheerful in that interview today. Whereas in recent Prime Minister's questions, he's been really tetchy, dodging questions, having into a row with the Speaker, if you remember, just before Easter. And his mood seems to have lifted a bit.
Well, maybe he's just decided, look, what will be, and I'm just going to go and try and live my best life.
Yeah, sometimes the fear of something is not as bad as the something itself.
And also, to be fair to him, I've just been at an event today where actually people were berating me, saying, why is it that your backbenchers are trying to bring down this Prime Minister? He's actually doing a really good job and we're really annoyed. So maybe he's also tapping into that energy that a lot of people feel. Because a lot of people look at what the Conservatives did and think we don't want a revolving door of Prime Ministers.
I think, though, today's announcement they were quite gimmicky, and I think it was an operation, let's save Reeves and Starmer with these giveaways, and will make the public all happy over the summer. So therefore, he did have to come out and smile his head off, because he was talking about things and initiatives that would lead to people going to the zoo and the theme park, etc. So.
I mean, you can't but help notice the contrast, John, that these measures will come in, you know, the good summer vibes will come in 2 years since he came to power, when they talked down the economy and talked about a £22 billion black hole, and then changed winter fuel allowance, and made everybody miserable, and they made everyone stress about the budget because they knew taxes were going to go up. The contrast is enormous, isn't it, in terms of that? If they'd come in and done happy vibes from the start, maybe they wouldn't be in this situation.
The Chancellor was criticised, wasn't she, for being miserable and making everybody feel miserable. And perhaps they thought, oh, that's not working, so let's try a different approach. Yes, they'll come in August. Who knows whether he'll still be Prime Minister in August? Depends on whether there's a contest or a coronation, I suppose, for the Labour leadership. I think anything that saves people a few bob in the summer. I mean, people were very sniffy about Rishi Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out, but that was quite popular as well.
Because it was a COVID spreader, was that why?
A COVID spreader? No, it wasn't. There were restrictions in place.
It led to a subsequent rise in COVID infections. That was the suggestion.
I don't think that was definitely proven. But I think the Eat Out to Help Out scheme was a bit different, because obviously we'd seen the whole sector of hospitality literally closed, and that was about opening it back up, also giving people the confidence to go out and supporting the local economy. This is robbing Peter to pay Paul. They've literally attacked business and failed to understand how it works with their regulation, with their taxation and NI. They've left business in such a difficult predicament. Then to turn around and go, oh, but we'll lower VAT for just a few weeks to help you out. It's a bit of a slap in the face for these people.
Are you asking me what I think?
John's like the Labour spokesperson. I love it.
I'm not here to speak for either political party. You two can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you would say that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, that's not me saying that. That's the businesses up and down the country. You know, I've spoken to a lot of business people who are literally on their knees because of the regulation and the taxation. And on top of that, of course, they've got the energy costs as well. And they're having to put up some of that onto the consumer, which in turn makes it even harder for them to get their customer base and means that we're seeing mass unemployment for young people as well. That is a dreadful situation to be in. And an initiative for a few weeks is not going to solve any of that.
Of course, it's not going to solve... It's not the big panacea to these problems.
The problem per household, according to the IFS.
Well, look, these are small things, but I suppose when you think about the really difficult situation that a lot of families face right now, a lot of this is going to be because of this war in Iran, and things are going to get absolutely worse, right? I've been at an event today talking about food banks, which, by the way, soared under the Conservative government. And I think sometimes when we're talking about the stuff with business, we do forget that under the Conservatives, businesses had a really hard time. I'm not saying the government's got absolutely everything right on the economy, far from it. But on something like this, when we've just had growth, positive growth figures, so there is a little bit more money for the Chancellor to spend, isn't it OK to say to people, families that are having a difficult time, you can have something to help you have a nice day out with your family? I think that is not like the worst thing in the world.
But you must admit that the timing is a little bit fishy, where the Prime Minister is literally fighting for his political life. And along with it is the Chancellor, so and everybody accepts if he goes, she goes, and then we're doing...
There's got to be no government announcements because of, the Prime Minister is in trouble.
It's a giveaway.
He's not having... He's not allowed to have... You're not allowed to make any announcements.
Can I make a non-partisan point, please? The government is concerned about people not being able to take foreign holidays because of a jet fuel shortage, and I think that's part of the reason for this. Let's make UK holidays more attractive.
OK. John, thank you very much indeed. So we heard the Prime Minister talking or highlighting figures on migration out today, showing that net migration fell last year to its lowest level since early 2021. It fell to 171,000 in 2025. That was down from 331,000 the previous year, and a drop of almost half year on year.
This is a really important day. The previous government lost control of migration in this country. We as a government made a commitment to the public to restore order and control. What we're seeing today is the evidence of that, a reduction of more than 80% from the peak in terms of net migration, making sure that we've got that robust system.
Isn't quite a lot of that, though, because of policies that the Tories implemented?
No, I can't accept that. I mean, the previous government, just basically pursued an open borders experiment. We came in and we've gripped a hold of that. We want a growing economy. We've got a growing economy because of the decision we've made, but without having to just say, well, let's open our borders. Instead, we've made very important changes. We've got in our immigration white paper, there's more to come in legislation as well. We've got a grip of this problem.
Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, was not impressed.
Well, the truth is this reduction is a result of policies introduced in April 2024 by the last Conservative government. It's good to see those Conservative policies working. It is frankly absurd for Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood to claim credit for policies the last government implemented. But look, the truth is this. These numbers are still too high. Net migration from outside Europe was an astonishing 350,000. And in fact, if you look at the people coming in and out, over 600,000 people entered the UK from outside Europe, often from low-income or even third-world countries. That is far too high, and we have plans to reduce that even further with binding annual caps that Parliament should vote on every year.
Yes, the Conservatives pointing out who is coming in is still absolutely critical. I know you're concerned about the social care sector, the NHS that requires high levels of immigration. This year's figures, could they go even lower? And, this is a random question. Do we not need to build houses if immigration's going down?
Well, we could have a situation where we have sort of net migration, negative, which will be a big problem for the economy. But I just want to say it is a bit rich from Chris Philp, who was a big part of the last Conservative government, where we saw these immigration figures absolutely soar to nearly 1 million. And what I think is interesting is now you have the Conservative government, and one of the reasons they were kicked out is because immigration went up so high. Now taking credit for things happening under Labour, yet when anything in the economy, they're like, that is nothing to do with us. And it's just very disingenuous. And if these figures, by the way, were going in the wrong direction or stayed static, you'd all be sitting here having an absolute go slagging the Labour Party off.
But I don't think it's just the Conservatives that are saying this. Look, I read an article on the BBC tonight, basically crediting the Conservative Party government by saying that it was in the latter months of the Premiership that they did the stuff like students and in relation to dependents and thresholds. And yet these are going in the right direction. We should all be happy with that.
They went up completely in the wrong direction under Boris Johnson.
Look, I'm not going to deny that the Conservatives cocked up on immigration. I'm not going to...
Good.
But I don't think any Conservative would deny that. But hang on a minute, nobody's denying that. The country literally kicked everybody out practically within the
denial about it.
What Chris Philp said then was that...
Listen to Chris Philp, it's like he's got amnesia about what happened.
Let me finish. What Chris Philp said was that these numbers are still too high. We need to be more radical in our approach to address that. We've got to remember why these are coming down. That was begun with the Conservative government's changes towards the end of their tenure. But there's also a big concern about those that are leaving the country. And who are they? They are particularly young people. And in between 16 and 34, that is a massive problem for the long-term health of our economy. If we've got a brain drain of our young going out, and why are they leaving? Because they're not feeling that this country is giving them the opportunity.
I just think the reality is, though, people are just not going to try. If there's one area that the Conservatives, as you say, to quote you, cocked up massively on, and that is immigration. And I'm afraid people are just not going to take Chris Philp seriously on this.
But hang on a minute, Chris Philp is not in government. Keir Starmer is in government.
And the figures are coming down.
The figures are still too high. That is the point.
And they're high because they're too high because they started off too high under the Conservative government.
John, where was Shabana Mahmood and why was she not out, applauding this result?
Well, I take the cynical view on that she didn't want to be interviewed about Andy Burnham and the Labour leadership. She did, however, issue a press release in which she said net migration has fallen by 82% in 3 years, and on the point about lots to do, real progress has been made, but there's still work to do. She says, that's why I'm introducing a skills-based migration system that rewards contribution and ends Britain's reliance on cheap overseas workers. And the Home Office's own figures actually show a massive drop in skilled worker visas, down 30% in the last year, and health and care worker visas, huge fall in those. One set of figures says 93% since 2023, and one says 88%. So there will be those who say that we're going to have labour shortages in areas like the National Health Service and care homes.
Yeah, absolutely.
OK, ongoing debate, as we all know. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We've had protests in Ireland over the death of a Congolese-born man after he was restrained outside a department store.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need? We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Now, hundreds of people protested this afternoon outside the Irish Parliament following the death of a Congolese-born man after he was restrained outside a Dublin department store last week. Just a warning that the report that you're about to see contains video of Yves Sakila being restrained and the moment before he became unresponsive. Mr. Sakila was pinned to the ground by 5 security guards following an alleged shoplifting incident, with one of them appearing to kneel on his head or neck at one point. Well, our Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy reports now from Dublin.
A man suspected of shoplifting fights for his life on a Dublin pavement. Pinned down by security staff, a knee is thrust into his neck. His struggles are in vain. This video lasts for almost 5 minutes and clearly shows Yves Sakila becoming unresponsive. He's taken to hospital where he's pronounced dead. The death and that video has shocked, angered and frightened many in Ireland's ethnic communities, already feeling vulnerable after years of a rise of a small but very vocal hard-right opposition to immigration.
We need justice for Yves. Nothing but justice.
They're now finding their voice to demand justice. 35-year-old Yves Sakila came to Ireland from the Congo more than 20 years ago. He was well known and liked by members of a football team and a church group here. He experienced challenges with drugs and homelessness and had a previous shoplifting conviction. None of that history matters, according to the Congolese community here. The simple truth, they say, is that nobody deserves to die over an alleged shoplifting incident.
If Yves Sakila was a white Irish man, would it have been handled the same way? Would it? We all know the truth.
The incident happened outside a major department store, Arnott's. The retailer said it was deeply saddened and no loss of life should ever be the outcome of a retail security incident. It says it's now conducting a review with its security contractor. The Irish police and the police ombudsman are also investigating.
Mr. Sakila was homeless, I understand. He had certain drug issues. And it seems that he suffered a loss of life as a consequence of something that has been said about a bottle of perfume or something like that, which does not ordinarily attract a capital penalty.
A man in his 80s was knocked over and injured during the incident as Yves Sakila was fleeing the scene. Immigration has become an increasingly divisive issue in Ireland in recent years. Regular protests have reduced sporadic rioting as the country deals with a surge in the numbers coming year.
I live here 30 years in Ireland. There's a worse of racism, hypocrisy in this country.
Racism is getting worse, you think?
It's getting worse and worse.
The case has divided opinion online and has stoked racial divisions. The Congolese in Ireland say they won't stop fighting until they see justice for Yves. Stephen Murphy, Sky News in Dublin.
Aisha, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously, we have to wait and see. There's probably going to be a full inquiry. See, Michael Martin's called for full inquiry. I mean, it looks very, very heavy-handed. I mean, just from that footage there. I mean, obviously, that's just one camera angle. That's somebody... It does look incredibly heavy-handed that a shoplifting incident that's obviously an alleged shoplifting incident has gone awry. And, you know, everybody thinks that shoplifting is a bad thing, but that does seem pretty excessive.
Yeah, and it gives you echoes of what happened to George Floyd, doesn't it? And I think that is the problem, that it appears so awful, but we do have to wait and see and listen to exactly what happened. But big questions need to be asked now, and a lot of people will be very concerned and worried about this being behaviour that is happening. I mean, it's quite a shocking story, really, isn't it?
And training, industry standard training, presumably for people as well, for restraint and some. But as you said, you know, investigation underway. Time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspaper. So let's kick off with the Metro, which reports what they call welcome news for the government. Debt migration to the UK has fallen 82% in the last 3 years. I don't fully understand that headline, if I'm quite honest with you. The Guardian hears that London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan has vetoed a proposed £50 million deal between the Metropolitan Police and the tech firm Palantir, in which the force would have used their AI technology. In the Financial Times, a trading frenzy expected on Wall Street, with SpaceX, OpenAI and Anthropic to be listed after new rules were implemented by Nasdaq, allowing stocks to be fast-tracked into indices. The Daily Express accuses the Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham of running away from their reporter after the potential Labour leadership contender was asked about his stance on the EU. And 5 people arrested over allegations of electoral fraud in the lead-up to the Thameside Council elections earlier this month make the front page of the Daily Mail. So let's delve inside some of the newspapers, shall we, including the inside page of The Times, which is quoting one publican suggesting that with the government's changes to VAT to help people this summer, that he is thinking about rebranding all his meals as children's menu, because these meals have to be for children. Another publican told The Times that after the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, he was audited by the Treasury. As a result, he said he would probably not bother claiming the VAT relief, which, of course, they're expected to pass on to their customers. So anyway, this is the announcement from Rachel Reeves and the government today.
But I think that you can't blame that publican that's saying I might just rebrand it all as a children's menu, can you, at all? It's quite a clever idea, because hospitality has really suffered over the last few years, and pubs in particular are closing each week. So they're going to cling on to anything that they can do to survive and to re-attract customers back and potentially save the lifeblood of part of our communities.
Exactly, yeah. And the Treasury fact sheet that's accompanying it, just in case you're planning as an adult to eat one of these meals, the meal would need to be marketed, presented and priced as a child's meal rather than who consumes it. We've had issues like this before, haven't we? Like the pasty tax and all, you know, and during the Eat Out to Help Out, where you had to sit down and... Do you
remember when we had the Eat Out to Help Out, and it was all the big discussion about what was a substantial meal, and was a Scotch egg substantial or not? The hours we wasted debating that.
Well, I think we're back there, folks. Anyway, there we are.
Well, look, I think there's a really serious story underlying this, which is people are having a really, really difficult time right now, mainly, and things are going to get worse, sadly, because of Donald Trump's insane war against Iran, which we are all going to pay an incredibly heavy price for, because he was too thick to work out that the Strait of Hormuz was quite a big deal in terms of energy. So that's where we are. And look, it's something that, you know, could help give a little bit of comfort to a lot of hard-pressed families for a day out, and people should be allowed to have a couple of nice things. But the reality is it's going to be a really difficult winter ahead, and I think the government is going to be under a lot of pressure to probably do more come the winter. You've got an interesting quote here from Paul Novak from the TUC saying, with the new energy price cap set to be announced next week, the government will need to be boldest to shield workers and households from Trump's illegal war. So I think this is a small thing which could help people. I think that's all for the good, but really it's going to be interesting to see what the government does down the track.
Yes, they're talking about targeted help on energy bills come the winter for lower-income households, aren't they? Let's go to the Matt cartoon just quickly as we leave this story. If I call this a pub, if I call this pub a soft play area, I can cut VAT on beer to 5%. Clearly, people are thinking about it already, aren't they? Now, Daily Express, stop running away from the Brexit question. Andy Burnham legs it when asked about Brexit as his stance on the EU haunts his bid for number 10. Labour hopeful hot-footed away from our man seeking answers. Is it the only question on people's lips, do you think, rejoining the European Union?
No, I don't think it's the only question. I also think that Streeting carefully injected it into the conversation the other day because he knows that the by-election constituency is a very Leave area, putting Andy Burnham in a bit of a predicament because if he appeared too pro-EU, it might mean that he doesn't potentially win that seat, which, of course, puts Streeting in a great advantage. One thing that I always think is quite funny, though, is that all leadership contenders, all prime ministers are big runners, aren't they? It seems to be this common theme. It seems to be something that you always see, and they're always out running and they're always wearing shorts, but as we said before, not as short this time.
Yeah,
Thank goodness.
absolutely.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, I was just actually seeing on Wires that in older years, not suggesting he's old, exercise is as important as medicine for keeping older people healthy, according to a new report from MPs. So there we are.
But it's running and not cycling or any other choice of sport.
No, that's true, actually. And actually, as they get older, it's best to protect your knees and do something else, isn't it? Maybe it's time to have a look at the list, actually, of the Makersfield by-election, which is underway. It is, as you said, a very pro-Brexit constituency, which is why it's such a live issue. And I think the Green Party candidate has stepped aside and then they're looking to get a new one. So we'll see how that develops and more people will be added to this list, obviously. But that is the candidate standing so far. In the meantime, people speculating about whether Wes Streeting will land a role in any Burnham cabinet. Suggestions from the Burnham team that anything would be a reunifying of a splintered party. What's the bet, do you think?
Well, let's see what happens with this by-election first,
because many hurdles.
You know it's not absolutely not in the bag. You know, it's going to be a very, very tight race. If Andy Burnham wins Makerfield, and if he wins it decisively, I think that there probably should not be a lengthy leadership contest. I think he's probably will be judged by most people as the best person to lead the Labour Party if he can beat Nigel Farage in a seat that Reform had done really well in. And I would hope that if he does, and again, these are lots of hypotheticals, if he does become leader, then I hope he would offer Wes Streeting a good job. I think Wes Streeting is a phenomenal politician, as I do think the same of Andy Burnham. I think there's a lot of talent in the Labour ranks. I would like whoever the next leader of the Labour Party is, it may well be Keir Starmer for a long time, but I think one of the things that has gone wrong for Labour is it has been dominated by quite a lot of factionalism, and I think we should have the best talent on the pitch. I think it should be a government of all the Labour talent. Lots of ifs there, but I would hope that if it's Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner, whoever it is, or even Keir Starmer for the foreseeable future, we've got to stop all this infighting and get the best people involved. I personally think it was a big mistake to block Andy Burnham from standing. Yeah, it was a completely stupid decision.
While you're talking, I know you want to come in as well. Let's just go to the eye, shall we? Top Labour women in despair, the paper tells us, at the dominance of parties' lad politics, suggesting no female leader is blamed on an inherently misogynistic culture in the party. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was at a big conference on Saturday, a Progress conference, spoke to so many Labour women who are yet again in despair that we are potentially facing another leadership contest and it is going to potentially be between a bunch of men. And we are still a party that has failed to deliver a female leader. And lots of people are really, myself included, really upset about that.
OK, talk about what you wanted to talk about and whether you want to comment on that as well. Sorry,
well, just on that, I mean, the Conservative Party obviously have had a few female leaders, and that's because the heart of it is it's a party of meritocracy. So you can say many things, but you can't say that it's misogynistic. And I think all political parties should aspire to be meritocratic. What I was going to say was more this...
Apart from Liz Truss.
Yeah, I think people should vote for who they want to vote for, and obviously lessons were learned. But on this topic about having a short leadership contest, I completely agree that that should be what happens because that's in the good interests of the country and stability. However, it was coming out of number 10 and rumours this week that there were plots in place that if Burnham wins this by-election, number 10 would insist on the mayoralty election going ahead first, with the hope and the thought that maybe Labour wouldn't win that, which would then be a really bad reflection on Burnham and then shore up Starmer's position again. So this might rumble on for many, many more months, unfortunately.
Yes, OK, we'll certainly keep an eye on it and talk about it every night. Let's remind you of what is to come. We will be talking about who might be in, who might be out of the England squad. The details are going to be glossily revealed tomorrow. More of the papers to come as well.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Well, we're taking a look through the newspapers with Michelle and Aisha, and it's full speculation about who might be in or out of the England squad. There we are. No Maguire or Palmer at the World Cup is the headline on the back pages of the Times there. Certainly, Harry Maguire seems to be absolutely gutted. He's already expressed his shock. He was first out of the gate to go public with the news that he's not part of the 26-man squad. And his mother, Zoe, said she was absolutely disgusted. So she's made her views clear. 66 caps to his name, 33 years old, been playing really well with Man City, had expected to be in it. Cole Palmer's had an injury-prone season at Chelsea. Man United, sorry, I've written Man United, I actually said it wrong, Man United for Maguire. And the others that are being speculated, Phil Foden, Man City, West Ham's Jared Bowen as well, also potentially left out. So you know, great disappointment for people we've become to think of as stalwarts of the team. And apparently Friday morning, Thomas Tuchel will name his squad as part of a live show at Wembley. You know, such is the change about who will travel to England's pre-tournament camp on June the 1st. It's not long now in Florida. So big glittery announcement. So great if you're in it, not if you're not.
Devastating if you're not, because it's the pinnacle of your career, and you've got to feel sorry for the likes of Harry Maguire, because obviously he missed out on the European Championships because of his calf injury before, but the manager's got a lot to live up to, hasn't he, because of the success that Gareth Southgate had. So let's hope he's making these decisions right. I'm sure he's feeling the pressure, and he'll have his reasons for calculating who should be in and who should be out. But I don't think I'd like his job, especially with mums like that chasing you.
No, absolutely.
I feel like the media outlet that can get an interview with Harry's mum, that is the interview we all want. She's going to be like the new Judy Murray, like, you know, this tiger mum, this sporting... She and Judy should do a podcast.
Yeah. She said she was absolutely disgusted, adding, "You couldn't have done any more. Hold your head high." Disgraceful. So she's not keeping quiet, is she? People who might be in, I've read Ivan Toney, former Brentford forward, now in Saudi, has made the cut. Ollie Watkins, Aston Villa, also included, despite not being picked for those March friendlies. So anyway, all revealed at this glittering event.
I think they should do cabinet reshuffles like that.
What?
With a live show.
Just get your mum out
like
as
a
well.
live show, like a live show with like a dry ice machine, and then the names are announced.
Yeah, just when reality television is under the cosh. Exactly that. Let's take a look at The Guardian, shall we? Amongst a number of newspapers that picture the scenes in Birmingham today, Aston Villa clearly celebrating their first European silverware since, well, for 44 years. Any silverware at all for 30 years, I think it was 1996. Absolute delight on the streets of Birmingham for the Villa... there we go, there's the return. I mean, many of the fans who'd been to the game in Istanbul didn't get back in time, but... yeah, lovely.
It's just brilliant footage, isn't it? When you look at how happy people are, how they've come together as a community. And it's monumental, really. 44 years. Many people will have been fans their whole life and not seen them win at this scale before. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and lovely to see the sunshine. And we're told in the Eye that it's going to be hotter than Honolulu in the UK. It's a nailed-on sunny bank holiday weekend, which in itself should be celebrated as an oddity.
It should. I've just had to go and get a quick paddling pool for the kids. Isn't it, before they all sell out?
Yeah.
Maybe there should be a subsidy on that.
I was just about to say the same. Yes, exactly. It's, you know, obviously... take care of people. And then last story, again in the Eye, a hot priest, you know, they do these calendars.
Love it.
A hot priest has actually admitted he's not a priest at all, despite being in the hot priest calendar.
Is such a brilliant
They've chopped
story.
the photo off. Oh,
such
no, I'm going to hold it up.
Story.
There he is, in his calendar picture.
A hot priest. He has confirmed that he's not actually a priest. He's a flight attendant for a Spanish airline, and the picture of him was taken when he was just 17, and the picture's very handsome. He looks a bit like the guy from the Thornbirds, like, you know, the kind of like that sort of like very... But it turns out that he's not actually a real priest, and he was asked if he minds being objectified, and he says no. It's very... Managing to be sexy in a priest's collar is no small feat.
And he says that most of the people in it weren't really.
Really? There's more to come. Both of you, Aisha and Michelle, thank you very much indeed. Sport is next. England's World Cup squad announcement. More on that to come.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We're being crushed. Free. from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation. So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
So let's get all the sport now. Here's Matt.
How would you describe James Milner, the person?
Boring.
I went there probably thinking the same as everyone else, the boring James Milner, anything but.
Dry English humour.
He's always the last man standing on a night out.
He's got another side to him.
Doesn't drink, but he's there to the end. If you leave early, you're getting stick.
Obviously the parody account got set up.
It was one pre-season, it came out. Whoever it is, we still don't know.
He countered that, didn't he? Unassuming, humble, great fun, great to be around, incredible company.
A very unique player and a unique person.
James is a wonderful player, an outstanding footballer, but players get linked consistently here.
He knows what the club thinks about him, and we will wait for his decision.
I had 2 years left, and I was looking to stay at the club when contract didn't come, and then eventually a contract came, and it was effectively a pay cut. You know, in the end, the club offered something which was probably at the time when I'd made my mind up was right at the end, whereas the mindset originally was to stay. It got to a point and it was like, well, might be better off going.
I think at that time it would have been coming to the end of Steven Gerrard's time, hearing that James Milner was going to become available because he hadn't renewed with City. And he was certainly, you know, right at the top of our list of key targets to go after. I got a phone call from Matthew who said James would like you to come out to his house and just spend some time with you, which I'd never kind of had that before. I'd met with players and agents, obviously for lots of different deals, but James was very keen that I went out and spent some time out at his house with him and Amy, his wife. And I felt like I and Liverpool Football Club were being interviewed by James.
I know how I'm going to be when I go there. I'm going to give absolutely everything to whatever club I'm playing for. I'm going to give them everything I have every single day on and off the field. For me, it's what's your intentions and what's the plan, and you know, you're saying this to get me there, but is this going to happen?
Rodgers has spent more than £70 million on transfers this summer. One player who's arguably impressed most on tour, though, didn't cost a penny.
I've been fortunate to play for a lot of big clubs in my career, and with that comes pressure, and that's what you want. You want to be playing at the top level with and against the best players.
Millie's such a good laugh around the dressing room, always one of the lads, but when it's time to be serious and time to work, and then he's on another level really, so he had a really good balance. He's very much black or white, to be fair.
He set the standards in training. I think I seen that from the first day I trained with him. He was the one that demanded standards. He was the one that if anyone wasn't quite at it, they would get told that they weren't. Every day that I trained with James Milner, I don't think he was ever below par.
We clicked at Liverpool. We both got an English mindset, and we both want to work hard. We both enjoy running off the ball. I don't enjoy slide tackles as much as him.
He brought relentlessness. He was one of the reasons why.
Yes, lots of coverage, obviously, about the England squad's announcement tomorrow. Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. We'll have all the top stories coming up for you here on Sky News after this break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking.
Thank you so much.
Trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not